At exactly 6:26 on a freezing December morning, 59-year-old Linda Foster opened her front door and immediately felt her stomach drop. Sitting on her porch was a large cardboard box filled with Christmas decorations ripped from her yard. Several ornaments were broken. Her late husband's handmade wooden nativity scene had been snapped in half, and taped to the top of the box was a bright yellow HOA violation notice that read, "Unapproved holiday display, final warning." Linda stood there silently in her robe while snow drifted across the driveway. She couldn't understand how this had happened overnight. The decorations weren't loud or oversized. In fact, for years, neighbors had complimented her small Christmas display because most pieces were handmade by her husband before he passed away from cancer. But after a new HOA president moved into the neighborhood, Linda suddenly became a target. And within weeks, the quiet subdivision would explode into one of the ugliest HOA scandals residents had ever seen. Linda lived alone in a small Colorado neighborhood after losing her husband Robert 3 years earlier. Ever since his death, decorating for Christmas became one of the only traditions helping her cope during the holidays. Robert used to spend months building wooden decorations in the garage, especially the nativity scene sitting near the front porch. Every piece carried emotional value to Linda because they were some of the last things he ever made before becoming sick. Most neighbors understood that and treated the display respectfully, but HOA President Melissa Grant didn't care about any of it. Melissa became HOA president less than 6 months earlier and quickly developed a reputation for being controlling. She constantly complained about holiday decorations, parked cars, trash bins, and lawn ornaments. Residents started joking privately that she treated the neighborhood like a military camp. But Melissa especially hated Christmas displays she considered old-fashioned or messy. Several neighbors later admitted hearing her complain that Linda's decorations made the neighborhood look cheap and outdated. The first warning notice arrived only 2 days after Linda finished decorating for Christmas. Melissa claimed the display violated HOA appearance standards because it included excessive lawn items. Linda politely contacted the HOA office, explaining the decorations were sentimental items handmade by her late husband. Melissa responded coldly, saying emotional attachment did not excuse rule violations. Linda was shocked because other homes in the neighborhood had much larger Christmas displays without receiving fines. One family even had inflatable snowmen covering half their lawn, but Melissa ignored those completely while continuing to target Linda. Soon, more notices started arriving almost weekly. One violation claimed the display created visual clutter. Another accused Linda of failing to remove decorations by HOA-approved evening hours, even though they weren't lit overnight. Then the fines started, $200, then another $300, then legal fees. Within a month, the HOA claimed Linda owed nearly $5,000 over Christmas decorations. Things became humiliating after Melissa started publicly discussing Linda during HOA meetings. At one meeting, Melissa projected photographs of Linda's yard onto a screen while criticizing the decorations as tacky. Linda quietly stood up and explained the emotional importance behind the display. She described how her husband handcrafted many of the pieces shortly before dying from cancer. Several residents immediately looked sympathetic hearing her story. But Melissa interrupted before Linda could finish and said the neighborhood should not have to sacrifice standards because someone refuses to move on emotionally. The room instantly fell silent. Even several HOA board members looked horrified hearing her say it out loud. After that meeting, support for Linda quietly spread throughout the neighborhood. Residents began visiting her house more often and bringing food after hearing how cruelly Melissa treated her. One elderly neighbor even offered to help pay the HOA fines if necessary. Meanwhile, Melissa became more aggressive. Linda suddenly received violations unrelated to Christmas decorations entirely. The HOA cited her for bird feeders, mailbox paint, and even flower pots near the porch. Residents slowly realized Melissa wasn't enforcing rules fairly anymore. She was personally targeting Linda. Then everything escalated one night, just days before Christmas. Around 2 in the morning, Linda woke up after hearing noises outside. By the time she reached the front window, she saw two men loading her Christmas decorations into the back of a pickup truck. Panicked, she rushed outside, screaming for them to stop. One man immediately drove away, while the other handed Linda HOA paperwork authorizing removal of non-compliant decorations. Linda stood in the freezing snow crying, while pieces of her late husband's nativity scene lay broken across the lawn. A nearby neighbor witnessed the entire scene and secretly recorded part of it on a phone. That video changed everything. By sunrise, residents throughout the neighborhood were furious after seeing footage of workers hauling away a widow's Christmas decorations days before the holiday. People were especially outraged seeing Linda crying beside the broken nativity scene built by her late husband. Local Facebook groups exploded with anger toward the HOA. Then more residents started sharing their own stories about Melissa. One family claimed Melissa threatened fines because their autistic son hung too many Christmas lights near the windows. Another homeowner said Melissa ordered them to remove a memorial wreath honoring their deceased daughter. The deeper people looked, the worse the stories became. Linda's daughter eventually hired an attorney after learning the HOA may not have even possessed legal authority to remove decorations from private property. While reviewing HOA records, the attorney discovered something suspicious. Melissa approved enforcement actions almost entirely against elderly residents, widows, and families dealing with medical hardships. Worse, HOA financial records showed thousands of dollars paid to a landscaping contractor secretly connected to Melissa's brother. That same contractor performed the overnight removal services targeting Linda's decorations. Once local reporters learned about the viral video and family connection, the scandal exploded publicly. News vans appeared outside the neighborhood entrance within days. Melissa tried defending herself publicly, claiming she simply enforced HOA rules fairly. Nobody believed her anymore. Residents began openly criticizing her at every meeting. Some homeowners even placed handmade nativity scenes in their own yards as silent protests supporting Linda. Then, investigators uncovered something even worse. HOA financial records revealed Melissa approved excessive holiday enforcement fees tied directly to the contractor connected to her family. Several residents appeared to have been targeted intentionally, while HOA money quietly flowed to the same company. County officials quickly launched investigations into possible fraud and selective enforcement. At the next HOA meeting, the clubhouse overflowed with furious residents. Linda sat quietly near the front, holding one repaired piece of Robert's broken nativity scene, while homeowners demanded answers from Melissa. One resident projected screenshots of financial records showing suspicious payments tied to Melissa's brother. Another played the viral video showing Linda crying outside in the snow while workers removed the decorations. The room erupted instantly. People shouted over each other, while Melissa desperately tried defending herself. Then county investigators entered alongside sheriff deputies carrying evidence boxes. The room fell completely silent as officials announced they were seizing HOA financial records related to fraud and discrimination allegations. Melissa's face immediately lost color, while deputies carried computers and binders out of the office. Within weeks, multiple lawsuits were filed against the HOA and Melissa personally. Melissa resigned shortly afterward while continuing to deny wrongdoing publicly. Linda's fines were erased completely, and several other residents previously targeted by the HOA also had violations dismissed. The neighborhood later voted overwhelmingly to reduce HOA enforcement powers entirely. But the moment residents remembered most happened on Christmas Eve several months later. Neighbors gathered outside Linda's home after secretly working together for weeks rebuilding Robert's damaged nativity scene by hand. As snow fell softly across the street, dozens of residents stood smiling while Linda placed the final wooden figure into the display with tears running down her face. For the first time since her husband died, the neighborhood finally felt like home again.